Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the May garden checklist video. I do one of these each and every month of the year. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that little bell notification to be alerted when I upload videos so you'll know when I put these up every month. And I have lots of other content as I develop this landscape in Raleigh, North Carolina, Zone 7B on a little tiny urban lot. Hopefully you'll enjoy following along with that. Let's get started on the May garden checklist. Somebody made a comment last year when I did the May garden checklist that why would somebody need a checklist in May? And I kind of agreed with them a little bit. May is just a month to get out there and do it. This is going to be your best selection of plants for the year. Although we're in a year where there's a bit of a plant shortage, but this is going to be the best time to get out there and get these things done and accomplished. And again, this is going to be the best selection. So you're going to have summer bulbs available, and you're going to have all your fruit plants available right now, and whatever shrubs and trees and vines that you're searching for. When I shop for plants this time of year, I don't like to go and get things, everything in full flower. I say this pretty much in every one of these, that I do like to plan for summer color. And even, in a situation where this camera is facing right here, toward the back of this lot, it gets kind of dark, and that's a good spot to add some sort of foliage color things, whether that's from a gold hosta or a golden a shrub that has gold color, or white flowers. A lot of people don't like white flowers a lot of times, but white flowers really show up in a dark space. So planning, just planning through those things. I would go ahead and get the plants that you're going to be using, even if it's going to be a week or two or three before you're planting them again, because there is a bit of a plant shortage. It's time to think about all of your containers, how you're going to do those during the season. I like to refresh the soil a little bit. If you've got some soil left in your containers from last year, I would dispose of some of that. Just put it out in the landscape somewhere. It can be used for mulch, and then put some fresh soil in. I like to do my own baskets. This house that I'm in right now doesn't have a front porch like my old house had. When I put a front porch on this one, I'll have big giant baskets out there again. But I actually like to plant my own baskets, because if you buy hanging baskets that are already just completely full and lush, you'll be watering them like crazy within just a few weeks. And just they last a lot longer doing them yourselves. Plus you get the fun of picking out your own plants. The other advantage to shopping as early as possible, now that most of us are past our frost-free date, is that you can buy a lot of these things in a lot of these annual plants in cell packs. And so I like to buy them in 4-packs and 6-packs instead of buying them in quarts. I'm kind of gotten a little annoyed with annuals over the last few years, having to buy a single annual for $4 or $5 when when I would like to buy a 4-pack or a 6-pack or something like that for $4 or $5. When you're putting those annuals in the ground, when you go and pick out these beautiful annuals, Vincas, Angelonias, Pentas, whatever it is. When I put them in the ground, and I know that a lot of people don't like to do this, I do pinch the flowers off, and that creates some additional branching. Also takes a little pressure off those annuals at the time you're putting them in the ground from having to flower and try to root in at the same time. Remember, you're going to live with them all summer long. So what they look like that very minute you put them in the ground is not the final product by any stretch of the imagination. If you follow my channel at all, you'll know how important inviting wildlife is into my landscape. I think it's, to me, it's the biggest part of the fun, honestly. As you're listening to this video, you can hear all the birds that I have invited into this space. And I'm a month away from this view behind me being full of butterflies and bees. And so a lot of fun. And so I do like to think through that. I've got several videos on the channel for pollinator plants I'm adding to this garden. If you'll watch all the videos here in the next week or two, they are definitely pollinator based, making a pollinator friendly garden. I hope that's something you guys would be interested in. Ground covers, okay? Be thinking about ground covers. It's something that I'm starting to add to this landscape now. I've built up a lot of the shrubs. I've put in a lot of the flowering perennials. I've put in a few trees. This is a small lot, so I'm putting in upright, narrow trees. I'm getting down to now thinking about ground covers, and I'm thinking about ground covers because I don't want to have to buy 10, 15, 20 yards of hardwood mulch every time I mulch. So I'm using ground covers as mulch and hoping that that will reduce the amount of time and energy I have to put into remulching this yard every year. One last thing on planting. If you're in areas of the South, we always like to say fall is for planting, meaning fall is the best time of year to plant. And that's pretty much true, except for tender plants. And so if you're in an area where you're trying to push the boundaries of a plant, if you're trying to grow a star jasmine or a palm or something like that in my area in zone 7B, I don't want to put that plant in the fall and not have it established before it takes its first winter. So marginal plants, plant them in the spring. So let's slide over and start talking about the vegetable garden. I just put up a video this week. I got my tomatoes and peppers in the ground. The things that I'm direct seeding, which are going to be cucumbers and some of my beans. I'm putting the seed directly in the ground now. This is probably going to be the best choice, best chance to get vegetable plants at your garden center and box stores right now, the best selection of those things. So I go ahead and grab them, even if you're not quite past your frost-free date. My frost-free date, or my average last frost date, was in April 15th, and now here we are right here at the beginning of May, and so I'm well past that. I don't know what yours is. If you're in zone 5 or 6, it might not be quite time to put those things in the ground. I wait until another week or two to put okra in the ground. It likes the temperature, the soil temperature around 70 degrees. Keep in mind, these vegetable garden, you're going to need things for these plants to climb on. So if you're planting beans or cucumbers or tomatoes, we need to think about the structures we're going to use to put them up. I use cattle panels over here. You can probably find at a farm supply store, and I just cut them in half and put them up. And they're great support, last for years and years. That would be my recommendation to you. Everything I do here on this channel, it's pretty much a simple formula, and I do the same thing on all parts of this garden, whether it's the vegetable garden or the planting beds over here with the shrubs and the trees. I laid down some compost in that vegetable garden, and the first time I did that vegetable garden, I tilled it. Since then, I just recomposted on the top with about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of compost once a year, and I plant directly in it. I don't retill. And I fertilize when I put things in with an organic fertilizer. Super basic. Over here in this part of the yard, I put down compost. Then I actually put down some wood chips because I had some free wood chips initially. If you can find wood chips, there's a website called chipdrop.com that you can put your name on if you're expanding a landscape area. Because it's initially very inexpensive to have someone drop them on the driveway for free. And then planted into this space. And it's the same thing over there in a vegetable garden. It's really just compost, organic fertilizer, and spacing the plants. This is one key area, is make sure you're spacing the plants properly. As tempting as it is to cram as much food into a small space as possible, you're more likely to get foliar issues and insect issues with the plants jammed too tightly together. A few more things in the vegetable garden. One thing you might want to consider is stagger planting your vegetable plants. I will leave some space in my vegetable garden to come back in a month to 6 weeks and add some additional plants into it because I know from experience that if you plant everything May 1st, sometime around August, usually a lot of this stuff's just kind of burn out. But if you stagger plant throughout the summer, you can have vegetables well into the fall season. If you haven't put in potatoes, it's not too late. I've got several videos on the channel for potato planting. I do mine in grow bags above the ground. You're welcome to do them in soil, but I have found that grow bag technique works very, very well if you want to go back and watch that video. Herbs are another thing that's definitely time to put in the ground. All of the warm season herbs and perennial herbs like rosemary and oregano and those things that come back every year, or evergreen plants. Be careful with mint. If you're new to gardening, mint is not something you want to put in the ground. Put that in a container and make sure it can't get down to the ground because it will take off pretty quickly through your garden. So right here at the beginning of May is a big transition for weeds. We're going from what were our winter weeds or cool season weeds like poana and chickweed and henbit, and all of our summer weeds are germinating. It's very important to stay on top of the weeding very early in the spring. And then get everything mulched. Get your beds weeded, and then get them mulched. Mulch is extremely important for going into summertime, because the sun can really do some damage to the roots on your plants in beds with just bare soil. You'd be surprised. The full sun plant can take full sun on the top of the plant, no problem, but it can't really take the roots being slammed with the sun constantly. Clematis is a great example of that. It is a plant that just has to have its roots mulched, or it gets damaged from sunlight. So keeping the ground covered is important for the heat from the sun and for retaining moisture during the summer. But I will say, make sure you do all of your projects before you mulch. Because when you go back in here, I'm doing a ton of planting right now, and I'm not going to mulch until I'm done with these planting projects, because every single time you stick a spade in the ground and bring soil up to the top, you're bringing weed seeds up. And so I'm going to get all of this planting done that I'm doing here in the next week or two, and then I'm going to come back in here and put and then make sure it's weeded, and then put a thin layer of mulch over, and then I'll have my protection from the sunlight, from the heat on my roots. I'll have my holding moisture in place thing taken care of, and hopefully I will seal off a lot of those weeds from coming up here in mid to late May and June and July, and throughout the rest of the summer. Next up is pruning. And as your shrubs bloom during the season, after they're finished flowering, that's usually the best time to prune that particular shrub. So if you prune things after they flower, typically you won't get yourself into trouble and cut off potential flowers. And so generally by May here, most of the early spring flowering things are kind of behind us. And so things like azaleas, as they finish flowering, this is the time to do it. And anything that flowers in your yard. May is a good time to prune conifers. If you've got any conifers to prune, I've got an Arizona cypress in the front yard in a container that needs some pruning. I don't like, it's just a good time of year to do that. Any of my evergreen shrubs that I'm not growing for flowers, if you need to do a hard cut back on them, early May would be a good time to do that. So if you've got old overgrown hollies that are 4 or 5 feet tall and you just want to take them down to 2 feet one time, May would be a great time of year to do that. Again, make sure you mulch around them, because keep in mind now, if you cut something down that low, the sun is going to be able to get into the middle of that plant and potentially do some damage. So after you cut them back, clean up the space, get the old leaves out of there, and then remulch it, water them in, and again, a great time of year to do that. I have a video on the channel about 2 months ago when I fertilized all of my shrubs and trees and the bed spaces in the yard. I use an organic fertilizer. I do it once a year. I'm in the process though of planting some additional things back here, and after those things go in the ground, I will fertilize those as well. And so if you haven't fertilized, this is the time to, you're not too late at all to fertilize. You wouldn't want to do this, mid to late summer, because we don't want to push growth on plants going into fall as they're winding down. But anytime in the spring, it's totally fine. I use an organic fertilizer. The reason I use an organic fertilizer is organic fertilizers feed the soil, and then the soil feeds the plants. And that's the way this process is supposed to work. This is what I'm talking about with compost. It's what I'm talking about with mulch breaking down. And it's what I'm talking about with organic fertilizers. Let's feed the soil, let the soil take care of everything else. While you're planning and planting and weeding and mulching and doing all of these things, this would be a good time to be thinking about putting in drip irrigation. I've run drip irrigation everywhere in this yard. I actually don't have it all hooked up yet. I haven't quite finished because I'm still moving parts and pieces around for containers and that kind of thing. But as you're planting your containers, you can add those to your drip irrigation. It's just an easy way to water. It's definitely the most environmentally friendly way to water as well, because you're watering under the mulch. When you're throwing water in the air, a lot of it's evaporating and not reaching. And it's water you're paying for that's not reaching your plants. Plus, watering directly to the root prevents a lot of foliar issues that we can get by keeping the leaves on our plants wet as well. So I have videos on the channel for drip irrigation if you're interested in that. In terms of watering, about 1 inch a week is what we need on most things to keep them happy. I don't know where we'll head in the month of May. We had a very wet winter here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then all of a sudden the brakes were put on, and it's pretty dry right now, and I find myself on some of the newly planted things watering, you know, kind of every day or almost every other day. Once they're established, I like to wean things off as quick as possible, and so I'll water them. You know, I just kind of monitor them. I let them wilt a little bit. I let them tell me a little bit. Leafy things. Don't do this with conifers, but with leafy things, you can let them tell you a little bit when they need water. And then I water them heavily, and I'm backing off though. I really want to get this stuff rooted in. If you plant things and you just baby them and you water them and water them and water them, they will not be prepared for that week vacation that you plan during the month of July. This was the time of year when I had my retail spaces that customers came in with leaves that were chewed on in a panic. Keep in mind, the chewing insects will be here before the predators will be here. And so you'll probably get a little bit of damage on a few things early in the season. I usually just wait to see how that plays out, because a lot of times the predators come in after those things that are attacking your plants. I will say though, if I've got something in my yard that gets an insect problem every single year, and I have to, it's something I got to monitor and think about constantly, that plant comes out. I find that in most landscapes, most of the problems, most of the time that's being taken up, most of the worry is usually one or two plants in the entire landscape, and erasing them frequently will make you enjoy your landscape quite a bit more. I have a warm season grass, zoysia grass. I put up a video last year when I sodded this space. We had some cool weather right into mid to late April, and so it stayed pretty dormant. It's finally pretty much woken up now, and I am going to fertilize it this week. And I actually use an organic fertilizer even on my turf. Again, I'm just trying to feed the soil and let the soil take care of the plants. Be sure when you spot your first hummingbird to go ahead and put your hummingbird feeder up. If you do that, I had my first one in the yard this week. Hummingbird feeder's now up. I've got a bluebird house in the front yard, and I've had a pair of bluebirds in there for several weeks. I'm thinking when I'll get in there and clean that out as soon as they're done with it for the first round this season. Don't forget to write down all of the plants that you're purchasing during the spring. Write down the names of them. It's so easy to put something in the ground and then forget what the name is. I have every plant written down that I've put into this landscape over the last year, but I've missed a couple. And I find myself on the hunt for some special little salvia that I purchased, and I can't remember where I purchased it from, and it's really kind of annoying. So I encourage you to write those things down. Make sure if you're putting tags in the ground, and if you watch my videos, you'll see little plastic tags here and there. Make sure you're writing with a permanent marker, with a garden marker. If you search for that specifically, and get those on Amazon or wherever you want to purchase them from, but make sure it's not one that the sun will bleach out, because you'll write on a tag and you'll be so proud of yourself for marking it, and then you'll come back in a month and the sun will have erased it, or the water will have erased it very quickly. And lastly, like I say every single month in these videos, go out and explore public gardens, arboretums, and your neighbors' landscapes. The best places to find little hidden treasures and interesting plants that will grow in your area is actually in your neighbors' gardens. And so thank you guys again for watching these videos and following along with the channel. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification so you're alerted when I upload a video. See you next month.